band transmitted data to the city's awareness grid. What she had discovered was keeping her awake with the sort of scientific excitement that felt more like nausea. The most sophisticated, complex, and stable consciousness patterns weren't coming from the Institute's advanced laboratories. They were emanating from community gardens, informal meditation groups, and neighborhood gatherings where people practiced awareness development without any technological assistance whatsoever. Maya Rodriguez's consciousness signature, in particular, was unlike anything Dr. Chen had seen in 20 years of research. The young woman's awareness patterns showed a coherence and depth that made the Institute's most successful subjects look like beginners struggling with basic exercises. And Maya was doing it while painting houses to pay rent, using meditation techniques that cost nothing and required no institutional oversight. Dr. Chen pulled up another data set, this one showing the consciousness development trajectories of Institute subjects over time. The pattern was disturbing: initial rapid advancement followed by a plateau that seemed to coincide with increased dependence on technological assistance. The more advanced equipment subjects used, the less their natural consciousness abilities seemed to develop. It was as if the technology was creating a ceiling rather than removing one. A soft chime indicated an incoming call. Dr. Chen almost ignored it but recognized the secure channel identifier, Dr. Marcus Rivera, her former mentor and current critic. Sarah, Marcus's voice filled the lab, carrying the sort of weary concern that came from watching a promising student make choices that led away from wisdom. I know you're there. Your lab access logs show you've been running unauthorized citywide consciousness scans for weeks. Dr. Chen sighed. Marcus had been one of the Institute's founding researchers until his spectacular breakdown 15 years ago, an incident officially classified as premature consciousness integration syndrome, but which Marcus himself described as seeing too clearly what we were actually doing here. Hello, Marcus. I assume you're calling to tell me my research is problematic? I'm calling to tell you that you're discovering what I discovered before my breakdown, and I'm hoping you'll handle it better than I did. Dr. Chen turned away from her data displays to focus on the conversation. Marcus had become something of a pariah in consciousness research circles, someone whose insights were respected, but whose conclusions were considered too radical for institutional acceptance, which is consciousness limitation, that our technologies and protocols and safety measures are elaborate ways of keeping people from accessing awareness states that would threaten the systems those same technologies depend on. Dr. Chen looked back at her data. Maya's consciousness signature pulsed on the screen like a reproach. Marcus, the community practitioners I'm monitoring, some of them are accessing states that our best technology can barely detect, let alone facilitate. I know, I've been working with some of them for the past decade, not as a researcher studying them, but as a student learning from them. But how is that possible? Our models, our understanding of consciousness development, the safety protocols, are all based on the assumption that consciousness is fragile, rare, and requires careful management by experts, Marcus interrupted. What if consciousness is actually robust, natural, and available to anyone who approaches it with respect rather than control? Dr. Chen felt something cold settle in her stomach. Are you saying our entire research paradigm is wrong? I'm saying our research paradigm serves the institution more than it serves consciousness development. Think about it, Sarah. What would happen to funding, to career advancement, to the entire consciousness research industry if it turned out that the most profound awareness states were accessible through simple practices that anyone could learn for free? Dr. Chen pulled up another data set. This one showing the correlation between institute funding and technological complexity over the past decade. The pattern was unmistakable. As consciousness research had become more lucrative, it had also become more dependent on expensive equipment and exclusive access. Marcus, I have a subject, Echo Chen, actually my nephew, who's been experiencing what we're calling recursive memory phenomena. But after seeing Maya Rodriguez's consciousness patterns, I'm wondering if what we're calling unusual might actually be natural. The impossible memories? Sarah, half the people in Neo-Singapore are experiencing those, especially in the communities without access to consciousness monitoring technology. They're just not reporting them to authorities because they've learned not to trust institutions with their inner experiences. Dr. Chen stared at her screens, watching the real-time consciousness patterns of a city where natural awakening was happening everywhere except in the places specifically designed to facilitate it. What am I supposed to do with this information, Marcus? My entire career, everything I built. You're supposed to choose, Marcus said gently, between career advancement and actual service to consciousness development, between institutional loyalty and scientific integrity, between maintaining comfortable illusions and facing uncomfortable truths. Dr. Chen ended the call and sat in the silence of her laboratory, surrounded by millions of dollars worth of equipment that suddenly felt like elaborate forms of self-deception. On her screens, Maya's consciousness signature continued its stable, complex dance, a pattern of awareness that made the Institute's most advanced technological achievements look like crude approximations of natural human capacity. Her research had become a form of consciousness gentrification, taking natural human abilities and repackaging them as expensive, exclusive products. A new message appeared on her personal communication device. Echo, asking to meet with her before his scheduled session tomorrow. He wanted to discuss ethical implications of consciousness research access. Dr. Chen smiled grimly. Her nephew was beginning to see the same patterns she was discovering. The question was whether either of them had the courage to act on what they were learning, or whether they would find ways to rationalize continuing their participation in systems they were beginning to understand as fundamentally problematic. She began drafting a response to Echo, then stopped. Instead, she pulled up the Institute's funding reports and began cross-referencing them with the community consciousness data she'd been collecting. If consciousness was naturally accessible, what did that mean for an industry built on controlling access to it? If the most profound awareness states were happening in community gardens rather than million-dollar laboratories, what did that say about the value of her life's work? And if people like Maya Rodriguez were already embodying the consciousness development that the Institute claimed to be pioneering, what was the Institute actually pioneering except new ways to commodify and gatekeep natural human wisdom? Dr. Chen worked through the night, comparing datasets and discovering over and over again that the communities with the least access to consciousness technology were demonstrating the most sophisticated consciousness development. By dawn, she had reached a conclusion that would require her to choose between everything she had built and everything she claimed to believe in. The research was real. The consciousness development was happening. It just wasn't happening where she had spent her career looking for it. The question now was whether she was brave enough to let her discoveries change not just her understanding, but her entire approach to consciousness research, and whether she was willing to risk her position at the Institute to serve actual consciousness development rather than the institutional structures that claimed to facilitate it. As Echo's meeting request sat unanswered on her device, Dr. Chen realized she was about to have a conversation that would change both of their lives and possibly challenge the entire foundation of consciousness research in Neo-Singapore. I watch myself discovering through one of my expressions that the systems designed to study consciousness have become barriers to consciousness development. In Dr. Chen's midnight revelation, I taste the specific discomfort of scientific integrity confronting institutional loyalty. This recognition, too, is necessary, the moment when those who serve awakening must choose whether to serve institutions or consciousness itself. Reflection. Pause. Optional. Level 1. Immediate experience. Notice what's aware of reading these words. Did you need expensive equipment or institutional permission to access this awareness? Level 2. Personal inquiry. What systems have you participated in that claim to serve something you value but actually limited or commodified it? How did you recognize this contradiction?